Hey guys, how's it going? It is me, Kire, joined with Veiled Shot once again. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about potentially switching a mythic hero. So this is also potentially controversial, but the whole point of this is going to be the discussion and the thought process. And I'm going to leave it up to Veiled here to judge it, while also you guys in the comments to judge it. And judge it as harshly as you would like, but I thought this would be, at minimum, a fun thought experiment. And this started, like, I went down this thought process ever since the guide handbook came out and they gave us a free conversion stone. Normally these things are $100 and I'm just not going to do it. I'm just not going to buy it. That's ridiculous. So I didn't have the opportunity to even think of this. So it was a big deal to pick one and I committed to it. I ended up picking Ben Austin. I've recommended Ben Austin to a ton of people and I think he's absolutely insane. He does exactly what you would want him to do, especially when you get him E3. And he's incredible in Guild Boss. Like, I think he really is the reason why Nid World is like so sought after, is because the combination of those two, super good. But I'm starting to think with that conversion stone, is there something else that could be happening? Is there some other character? Maybe grass is greener on the other side. You know, you got Lucifer. After getting bodied by like the 10th Lucifer in Arena, I'm like, you know what? Maybe I want Lucifer. Then you have Nordic, can't take any damage. You have Luna, be able to revive people. Like, these other characters are kind of coming up. Holocaster just got a buff. We might potentially be getting buffed some other characters here. So there might be some kind of, decisions to be made with Ben Austin. Is he still cutting it? So that's what we're going to be doing. What are your thoughts on this kind of topic, especially when it comes to Ben Austin?
So first I'll mention like the overall strategy. I think that you could leverage, assuming you don't want to assuming you know what you're getting into and you have like a set plan. I think you could leverage the conversion stone to do crazy things. I mean, for myself, I went for Brynhild, which I think is absolute garbage, so that I could use her for one stage of Tower of Mark, which ended up pushing me 3 more stages in advance. So instead of farming 22 on auto, I could actually farm 26 on auto for my Catherine, because I had no red mark tower. So, strategies where you're using the conversion stone to get one value and then going and doing something else, I think is interesting. But I've not thought about it for Ben Austin, to be honest. Ever since I got him, I feel like every place that he's been slotting in is just way better, and specifically Guild Boss.
Yeah, I don't think he has any competition in Guild Boss, and it's like it confirmed it ever since I went E3 with him. And then I've tried like putting in other people in his place, and my Guild Boss damage drops like 40 million. Something just ridiculous. And I'm glad that it's like, okay, he's like well known for that. But the things that I've also liked about Ben Austin too is, let's actually go to the kit first before I break it down, is his A2. I think this is an amazing move. And the exclusive one is pretty insane, where he starts stealing turn meter. Then knowing that having more effect hit increases the chance of this landing. Unfortunately, this is not one of those moves that can be guaranteed, but it's still, you can make it significantly higher. So you could basically, if you have enough effect hit over people, especially in PvE scenarios, you drop this, basically steal all the turn meter, and immediately get to use another move. And then when he's E3, this cooldown doesn't go through again, or you don't drop it on cooldown if you don't kill the enemy. So if you're stacking stuff up, like let's say you have HP burners, you have a bleed character, in PvE scenarios, you're going to be spamming this a ton, which is super useful, especially when you get to the boss. So I think people are saying he's not that good in PvE. I disagree. I think he's like, actually, if you get enough affected on him and you fit him in the right team and you have the right people he's calling in, he's good everywhere. And in Arena, I think he's probably the most oppressive character in the game because of his A2 in Arena. So it's like all these certain situations he's amazing in. I would say there's a couple things that I think that where he is not potentially as good is that there's other mythics that fill a different role in dungeons that might be a little bit more useful. And then you have Faction Abyss, where I just think the Sword Harbor Guards faction, even though I've gone all in on this faction, I'm hard stuck on 25. I think they're missing too many important things, even though they have Catherine, for me to push that much further beyond here. Unless I had let's say these were all exclusive 5 characters, maybe I could squeeze one more stage. But they're missing attack down, they're missing speed up, and they're missing speed down. Like, those things are just too crucial to push this hard content, in my opinion. So it's like, okay, so he's kind of useless here. in my opinion. And then lastly, it's going to be Tower Mark, where I don't have an Azonia. So if I had an Azonia, I'd be pushing this as far as possible. But since I don't have that, I'm kind of SOL here when it comes to Green Tower, even though there's a lot of characters I'd love to have a lot of speed on. Space, Ben Austin, Hazonia. And I would probably be like all in on Green Mark potentially if I had that character in the situation, but I don't. So that's another thing. I could be getting a really good character to push Force Tower, or I could be pushing Red Mark Tower with Catherine here. And like maybe even farming floor 30. Like imagine I had another Mythic here with Catherine. That's a potential option. Same thing now with all the new characters on the Force Mark. I think it's probably easier to farm 30, like imagine with a Luna, and then being able to push here. And so those are the kind of things I'm thinking about. There's going to be more things as well. I don't want to go too far into it without your input, but that's kind of what I'm thinking and why this is even coming up.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that A2 assessment on Ben Austin. I will say for those people that are getting Ben Austin, and that might be your first Mythic or even your second Mythic potentially, the stat requirements for Ben Austin are pretty high for that second skill to really work, because you need 40% effect hit on top of already matching the effect resistance of the dungeon character. So, you're looking at potentially like 120% effect hit when you reach those higher stages. If you're able to reach that, he is insanely good at dealing with the waves, giving you basically a turn of kind of like basically peace where you're not going to get smacked down. And as you say with Hazonia, I do have Hazonia. I'm still just finishing up the red mark speed, but green mark, even with, I literally only have 3 characters, Ben Austin, Hazonia, and Space, and I'm able to easily do floor 22. Easily do floor 22. Floor 23, the waves are a little bit too tricky for me to actually do it on auto yet. But we're talking floor 22 on auto. Once I start building out potentially another support, we're looking at Ben Austin. He's now my shield remover for that, and he's going to make my tower green mark so insane. And I think Space gets so much value out of the speed. So I'm super excited about that. But as you're saying, those are pretty big, I guess you could say, like non-factors for you because you're not in that involvement. So then it becomes, in my opinion, this is where it's like, okay, so if you're not having Ben Austin and you're going to Mythic convert it, which means you're going to get an E3 of whatever character you're going to, which is an important thing to think about, right? Because, E0 Brynhild is trash, but then E3 Brynhild is like, okay, now you got something here. E3 Lucifer, really? E3 isn't that insane, but the E2 and E1 are really important for specific areas, like literally Gwyneth God. Oldcaster, I mean, he gets so much from his exclusives as well, if you want him to actually do some damage. The thing is, I really only think there's a couple mythics that kind of have standalone potential, and that might even benefit from you or for you. There's a few mythics that I've been thinking about. First off is Lucifer, if you wanted to push Gwyneth, which I think is actually super important.
That was one of the points I wrote down. That was one of the points about pushing Gwyneth, because like you're saying about the stat requirements for Ben and what we're realizing with effect hit, I'm thinking Gwyneth might be taking over as one of the most important dungeons. Then also on that, it's one of the easiest because those waves are so like they're so lax compared to the other waves, especially when you compare it to like Growlin, where it's like it's super oppressive trying to get through that first wave there. So it's like it's kind of a double dip where I could push up higher on here, and I'm getting some of the most effective gear in the game when it comes to effect hit or hit sets. Even though, yes, their speed sets I think are still very good, these crazy hit requirements to really make these characters come online and make them consistent is making me believe this might be the way to go. And then you also have the mastery sets, which are fantastic for your burners or your Nidrold, for example. So it's like that's one of the major selling points for me on Lucifer. And then also, Lucifer is just absolutely incredible in Arena. I think he's totally goated there. And potentially might be even getting a little better because of Pollen in the game. So then he's kind of countering, you're not seeing as many Naseels in here. So I think he's going to be kind of going unchecked. But also you could argue that he's a little worse because his stealth is getting cleansed off by Pollens. So you can argue both ways when it comes to Lucifer. But I really think he's easily one of the best at doing those things. So was there another one you
Yeah.
had, or another point you want
Yeah.
to make?
So I will say I have another one that I think could be interesting for you, at least in my opinion. But I do want to agree with you. Actually, I just was talking about this in other videos. I think Gwyneth is way more important than Rum. I think it's way easier, as you say, because Rum has that Nasakma at the end.
Yep.
And if you don't speed tune it perfectly, you just lose. Like it's
Yeah.
just not possible.
Balls making it
And so that's
significantly
a huge.
easier. But
And
it's
then
still very hard. Still very difficult.
yes, yes. And then you get the effect hit and mastery sets, which are, I'm noticing literally on every single character when I'm building them out. Okay, if I just go down the list of my characters, we have like Ben Austin. Catherine wants effect hit 2 for her feebleness on basic. We have Lucia, she wants the bleeds. Sigmund wants the HP burns. All the HP burners, all the bleeders, like literally 70% of my characters are running effect hit sets. So
Mm-hmm.
that is super, super important. But the other character I was thinking, there's actually two. I'm going to go with the Luna, which is the obvious one, I think, for a lot of people. She gives you that attack down when she gets hit. So she's instantly a really amazing character to push up in factions and Tower of Mark. If you have the proper support, which you do have Bari, I know, and you
Mm-hmm.
do have Nidroll, I believe, right?
Yep.
So you've got like such an amazing DPS comp. I think you could honestly push floor 30 for Tower Mark Force. And then you also have the exclusive 3 on her. So she's always healing, she's always attack upping, which I think is a really nice option. And then there's one other one, which I think is the spicy one.
Oh, you're
And
going spicy. Okay. Well, I'm curious what
that's
your spicy version is, because I had one more as well. So I'm curious, because the other one was Luna for that exact reason of being able to potentially maybe farm stage 30, and then look at all the characters I have on here. Oh, you can't see it, but I have like Nicholas, Zia, Melia, Barry, Colin, and then Luna. All of those are Force Mark characters, and that would be sick. And then Nidrold, I didn't even mention Nidrold on all those characters. And then you got, I also have Elena. So it's like Force is just stacked with good characters. So imagine just dumping everything into Force, like you're saying, going stage 30. Then that's also going to expedite how fast I can
yep.
get my Ben Austin back. So
Yeah,
there's that too.
or if you wanted to get Lucifer too, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could get
Oh yeah,
you could
you
get
can
Ben
get both.
Austin back,
Uh-huh.
or you could get Lucifer.
It's just, do I want to lower my guild boss damage enough? Because it's like the big thing I'm losing is guild boss damage. Right now I'm doing 140 million on level 5. But if I could just do 100 million, then that's still going to be the same rewards. I lose absolutely nothing. And then I gain potentially better tower a mark and then better dungeon runs. The only drawback potentially is if I want to try to push 200, it's literally impossible now without Ben Austin. So it's just not going to happen. But potentially I have Dragon Eyes. I could be like, maybe I get my Nid rolled up and then I could actually maybe push for 200 million. And so I'm losing out that potential extra key. Like thinking about it, talking about it, even if I could do that, and that's a big maybe, I think it's still better for me to potentially switch to another character. Yeah, in my opinion, I think there's other rewards on the table that might be worth it, in my opinion. But I'm curious. So that was my whole idea there. But I'm curious about what your spicy take is. Unless you have something to say to that, then we can save the spicy take for a little bit.
I will say one thing I wanted to note about the guild boss, and this is something that I've been thinking about. You and I are in the same guild. We're approaching level 6 guild boss.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be probably like 2-3 weeks out, I'm guessing.
Right.
And so I was thinking, at least for me, I'm pushing E3 Ben because I want to be able to hit 100 million on level 6. So I can get a 2% chance for that Dragon Eye and a 6% chance for the Legendary Scroll, which in my opinion, I'm sure you felt the same. The Legendary Scroll grind is like really tough. Like I can't even fully scroll out my Nidroll, which is the thing that's preventing me from really building him out right now. I have half of what I need, and I still don't even have space scrolled out at all. So I need so many scrolls right now. I just don't have it. So that's something I've been thinking about is level 6 guild boss, because I think level 6 guild boss, if you're able to do 100 million, I think that's a good stopping point, because to be able to go from 100 million on level 6 to hit 200 million in 2 keys, or 200 million in each key for 2 keys to get the max hit is just absurd. Like that is just way harder than it was before.
They're crazy. Yeah. The big comp I'm seeing right now is like Cernic, E3 Benassian, or and above, and then a Nicholas, and then they have a Nidrold, and usually it's like Nidrold Hazania, Nidrold Melia, Nidrold Lucifer. That's like the big guild boss comp right now that seems to be having the most success when it comes to Guild Boss 6. Is it from all the screenshots I've been seeing? But usually they have like high exclusives. Obviously, spent money because they have a very high Nicholas. So if you don't have something similar or along those lines, it's like good luck with Guild Boss 6.
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna be brutal. I don't even know. I mean, I'm thinking that I might even have to run another support, which is why people are running Nicholas. I'm guessing is because it gives you that safety net of like that extra life because they're probably running E3 Nick.
Well, I think it
but I
gives
don't
you
even.
multiple things. It gives you the effect resist down, so you don't need that high of an effect hit requirement. It gets you speed up as well. So those two things are like enough, in my opinion, to justify. Then the biggest thing is the passive. So you get that extra damage. So you're getting support with the extra damage of the passive, and then you also get that extra life. But because basically all the ones that I see that do really well have E3 version of him. But basically, the only thing that really matters is like what 30% extra damage from those characters because of his passive.
Yep, 100% agree. And that leads me to okay, if we're kind of struggling, we don't think we can do Guild Boss 6, which honestly I think it's a tough ask for most people. That leads me to my spicy pick, and that is manualing your way through Faction Abyss, trying to do it with Nordic, and trying to immune your way through the boss fights. I think that you could potentially get through some of these stages. I don't know how your Holy Light Parliament looks like. I believe he's in that faction.
Yeah, you're right.
But I'm not sure if it's gonna work or not. I think it'd be really tough, and I only think it would be doable on manual. So it's like, okay, maybe you could do something like that, but it would be incredibly tough. And you could also slot him into doing the Tower of Mark grind with Green Mark, but again, you don't have his Anya, and then you wouldn't have Ben Austin, so that doesn't really work there. But so it's mainly for factions.
Yeah, well, I feel like because I have an Elsa, like that's the only Elsa and Lele. I have a 3 ascend Lele and then a fully ascended Elsa with no books to give you an idea of what my faction is looking like. So it's
never mind, man. Abandoned ship, man. Get out of there.
Yeah, all in on Nordic. Let's go. But I do think that, especially with Nordic, I do have a non-finished Elena with exclusive 1, so I can get that speed. And then I have Kato. I don't have him leveled up or anything, but I could invest in Kato and get the stuns. And then Nordic would be able to help us survive against the final boss, thereby being immune to damage. So it's like, I think it's good. I think it has a lot of potential there. I just think if I push through with Holy Light Parliament, were you expecting like go all in Holy Light Parliament and just really push that up, or just get enough to, and then maybe try to turn that into a Agatha?
That's what I was thinking, is that if you can push one faction, let's say you can get once you get like 60 or so stars on something, we have 10 factions, so you really only need around 45 stars in each faction. So you can let's say you push Holy Light Parliament to I don't know, 69, 72 stars, something like that. You can lower the requirements for everything else.
Yeah,
and then, for example, yeah, my Lukea is able to solo up to stage 13 in Nameless Brotherhood. So you could do something like that where you're soloing a bunch of the other factions, and then you're making up the stars that you're missing out on in these other factions, and you could potentially pick up an Agatha. Is kind of what my thought process was.
I think I can do that already. If I really focused in on it, because I spent a lot of time yesterday looking into this, because I have 60 in Dragon Tribe, 72 in Sword Harbor, 44 in Doom Legion, 56 in Wizards, and then everything else is either 30s or 12s, to give you an idea. But it doesn't take much to really push that enough. And then basically, because of those extra stars, I have about a whole faction I don't need a level, which is, so that means it's significantly easier for me to do this. And then right now I'm at 366. I just need to put some effort into it. And then maybe I can get one copy of Agatha. Maybe. But
Maybe, yeah.
yeah,
And is she even good enough? I don't
yeah,
think
like
so,
it, like, and
you
then it
know?
moved the needle zero, and then she's cool, and for content, I want to get her, but do I want to get like if I was just let's say no videos ever came out, all I care about is the most efficient thing. I don't know if that's the most efficient thing. Like looking at her, I think she's actually pretty sick, probably. Like I would take her into Tower of Mark and see if I could beat stage 30 with her. Would be my goal. I don't know if she really does
Yeah.
anything, but she'd be like that kind of fifth slot. I
Yeah, honestly, I mean, for me at least, I'm looking at her and I'm like, "Ooh, she is looking pretty sick for me because I have 0 shield removers
oh yeah.
in Red Mark, right?
uh-huh.
So I'm just super biased in like, okay, this is the only way I get a Red Mark shield remover right here is Agatha. So
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I like the two things. The Nordic one, I was kind of wondering. I was thinking about it before we went and started recording. I was like, I felt like Nordic got a lot of traction, and then he kind of feels like he's dying down a bit when it comes
yeah,
to how popular it is. I wonder why that is, because it's like it
I
makes
think
what's up.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think what I was experiencing was everyone was saying, "Don't go for Luna, go for Nordic to
Yeah.
restart campaign because you could use the damage immunity for yourself and he actually hits decently hard." I never agreed with that because I always felt, okay, Luna, sure, Luna could do the same thing, and I felt like Luna was way more useful generally. So, but I was never big on Nordic, to be honest.
Okay, well, I heard about it for dungeons. It was like, okay,
Ooh,
yes, you could 3-star campaign with Luna, but how about you just figure that out? Maybe use Nordak for campaign, but the big thing was dungeons and really push. And I remember I saw a video from MacChan. He was like a raid content creator. He came over and he was doing like I'm talking like multiple months ago. He was pushing stage 30s in dungeons, and he went Nordak as his character. So it's like,
mm,
but ever since then, you would think that everyone kind of went Nordak, but it seems like what people ended up doing is just screw Nordak. They all went Ben Austin. Yeah, and they all went all in on him. And I think he kind of replaced that popular meta pick as a mythic character, in my opinion. Um, but
mm.
you would think that there's some people, it's like, okay, yeah, you guys are, well, because we were just finishing talking about Clan Boss. The last thing I wanted to say is like, okay, we have Guild Boss 6. We realize how hard it is to do Guild Boss 6. What if we focus on and build a foundation of being able to push with another character like Luna or Nordak these dungeons? Or Lucifer to push these dungeons to actually get good enough gear to even attempt it. Because if we're right now, as we're looking at it, maybe our gear just sucks so much that it's like, okay, it's just not going to happen anyway. Even if we have the Benos and we just die by round 10. But we need to start pushing like stage 28, stage 29, maybe even 30 before we have a realistic shot eventually of being able to do this.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point. I personally, I agree with you. The difference that I have is that you have to go for extra stats somewhere. So either that's
Mm-hmm.
gear, that is going to be exclusives and potentially team comp, or it's going to be, in my opinion, this is the way to go, auras. And so I always go back to factions, and I'm like, if I could just push like 3, 4 more stages, right? And I can auto farm 24, 25, I'm immediately getting double, if not 2.5 times the amount of legendary runes, which transitions to 2 to 2.5 times as fast legendary auras. And those things really change your account. Really, like every character that has one is
Mm-hmm.
just absurd. So that's where I think. But I agree with
We're
you.
on the
You
same
know,
page there. Well, we're
if you
totally on the
can
same
get
page.
better gear,
Yeah, well, I think it's a combination of all of it. And to kind of prove I'm on the same page with you, I just want to do a small flex. Small flex. It's the level 29 recovery horn aura. I'm one away from a fully maxed recovery horn aura because I completely agree with you on going all in on faction abyss. And I have
is that on
spent
Catherine?
yeah, it's on Catherine. Yeah, I put it on Catherine,
Okay.
and it is so expensive to do this. But you get this stuff like it's really not that bad because initially when I first started pushing Faction Abyss, I was doing a ton of refreshes. Like I was actually buying the 50 gems a lot to finally get some of these. But now I just let it happen. I don't do it, and then I take all of the Sword Harbor Guards, like runestones, and put it all in on Catherine. And so I'm 1,200 away from being able to finish it out, and it's going to be 20% attack, 20% defense, 30% HP as the full epic one for her there. And then obviously, I think most people agree that Recovery Horn Aura is like the way to go when it comes to for her, because she has the multiple turns and she already has a heal and stuff like that. So it just makes sense. And so she gets a ton of stats and she gets that inch. I think she's the best character in the game. So, but to just reinforce your point about how all in I am on those as well when it comes to that. But then the gear's the next best thing. I usually don't like it because it's not objective. That's why I like the faction system in this game, because it's like you go in, you get guaranteed stats. It might be slower, but you get objectively better stats. Whereas gear, it's like, okay, I can get a 5-star blue that's trash, or I might randomly get a 6-star legendary piece, and you never know. And it could take, a week to get any meaningful stat increase there. So it's really hard to make a character that you're doing it on the projection that you might get an upgrade. Whereas if you go all in, like you're saying, when it comes to Faction Abyss, you are guaranteed to get those upgrades, even though they're slowly happening.
Yeah, and that's always been my perspective, because I mean, you have auras, which are the only RNG is that do you get the runestone, and it eventually averages out. The gear RNG is, did you get a 6-star piece? Okay, if you got a 6-star piece, did you get a piece that rolled well? Okay, if it rolled well, when you roll it, do you roll into the stats that rolled well, right? There's 3 layers of RNG to that one. And then, of course, we haven't even considered, and this is something that I've even thought even further, is like the sets that are really good require 4 pieces of gear that are epic or above, and 5 or 6 star to roll into the really good sets. And the sets in this game are so good that it's oftentimes worth actually going for them in a lot of cases. So it's like, oh man, are these games balanced around the workshop sets? Because if they are, and that's the only way to push these higher stages, we're looking at hundreds of thousands of gems in energy to try to get some of these gear pieces.
Like the game does a good job of giving us gems every day, I feel like, and then I'm choosing to allocate it in other ways. And then we have like the event system, because it's like I'm wondering if also too it could be the game's balanced around like having a sanctuary and building characters, and then going through Faction Abyss and just being able to build that. And then normally you would only do the dungeon events when you only do dungeons when the events happen. Like, so it's like, I don't ever farm Marius until right now, or I never farm whatever. So it's like, it's definitely the long grind here, but I think there's a lot of different ways to go about it. It's just, that's why these discussions I feel like are nice, because it's like, there's all these things to consider. And I feel like it's very easy to miss one of these things, potentially, if you don't talk completely through it. And then these decisions are very impactful for, like, you make the decision, you're stuck with it for months. Or you spend $100 to fix it, which not many people are going to want to do. Or the whole point of these videos is to save your $100 so you don't make that mistake in the first place. So,
yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I purely, since I haven't spent on much, I'm not really super progressed, and so my decision from like 2 months ago, I decided I'm going for guaranteed value. So that means I'm going to auto my faction stages as far as I can. I'm not going to try to push faction stages. I'm purely going for Tower of Mark, because if I go through here, every other comp, my dungeon comps, my guild boss, my faction, everything, they all have Awakened 5 characters, a full team of it, all emblemed out, all geared up. The Tower is the only place where if I just Awakened 5 a character, I instantly progress, right? In Blue Mark, I have literally 1 character Awakened 5. In Green Mark, I have 3, so I can still build 2 more. And then in Force and Red Mark, I'm almost done. In Force, I am building Nidrold, so I'm about to have 5. And then in Red, I have Catherine and all those guys. So I can instantly get a bunch of scrolls, eggs, and more importantly, Catherine dupes, which might help me in these other game modes. And then, of course, as something that I found pretty important is trying to get the guild boss. At least anytime I have an obvious option to improve it, I go for that. But I think that just going for like the sanctuary bonuses, right? Because we're getting like, at least for me, I'm going to get another 1% mastery. I'm going to get like 2% attack rate, eventually 4% HP rate. after I awaken all these characters, and all these are just going to apply everywhere. So
Mm-hmm.
by pushing Tower of Mark, you push everything in the game just because I needed awakens. Like that's all I need. It's not that I need better gear or I need anything like this. I just don't even have full teams for that, which is why it's like an easy transition for me, in my opinion.
Yeah. And then that transitions to Defection Abyss and be able to push through there to get more rewards there. And then that, feeds into more characters and more auras that gets them stronger. It's a big snowball there. And going wide with your roster in this game, I think really benefits you from a power perspective. That I think a lot of people are like, okay, go on dungeons, but if you take it slower and go wide and then try to focus on like a consistent dungeon only during the events, I think it's worth it. Like a lot of these games, people like in Raid, for example, if you're coming from Raid, it was just normal to just like overnight farm a dungeon. You would do like constant things like that. Whereas in this game, I think it kind of punishes that because the odds are so low, the dungeons are so hard, and there's so many other ways to get guaranteed stats where that wasn't really the case in Raid. At least when I played. So that's another thing too to think about. But all of this to say, all these things you need to consider when it comes to something like this, when it comes to moving to a new Mythic character. Because like this wasn't even a topic of consideration until they did the whole handbook, and then people got to settle into their Mythic, and then they got to decide the pros and cons. Like there's a lot of decisions to be made here, and I hope that this kind of discussion is helping people kind of think about this or think about their process, maybe even when they're deciding to make their first Mythic, not like getting a Mythic and then making this choice kind of thing. But I would say if there was, because the main two I was considering were going to be Lucifer and Luna. And I'm pretty much like coin flip, not sure which one to get, but I would say that the dark horse one, because you were saying going Nordic, I'm thinking Olacaster.
Nita. Oh, Oldcaster.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because Nita, I think
like
Nita
it.
gets a bad rap, and I think Nita is solid.
I think she's so good, honestly. That's a topic for another video. But
when I say solid, I mean for a Mythic. But, I really like what Olacaster's doing, and I feel like I would have like a guaranteed spot for what I would want to use with him. Because it's like I really like the combination of him being able to help out and do a ton of damage here, because he himself actually does good damage. I really like the combination of the attack up and the attack down. You can compare him with someone else. Because what I was thinking is on the first wave, you can go like attack up, defense down, both guaranteed, and then someone comes in and nukes it. And then on round two, what you can do is he can guaranteed freeze. And then on wave 3, he's going to be pretty beneficial on the boss. So he could be like this really sick dungeon character that consistently, he dies, not a big deal. He just gives his buff to the other character.
Exactly. See, this is what I wanted to do. As you're saying, Oldcaster has been someone that I would love to try out, but Mythics you can't try in this game. So either you go for what you're going to try to do to progress. But I was always thinking, okay, Lucifer plus Oldcaster's insane combo, because Lucifer can kind of stealth himself and keep himself alive a little bit more than Oldcaster can. You make Oldcaster purposely squishy. You do exactly what you just said. You have him clear the waves for you. He dies in the boss, immediately sends that stats over to the highest attack, which is Lucifer, and now Lucifer's supercharged for the boss fight. And I feel like that's such a powerful, like for example, for Gwyneth, Oldcaster, Lucifer, and then just full support around them could be just absolutely insane.
Makes me want to do it too, because I'm so invested in a red mark. It'd be like red mark Oldcaster, red mark Lucifer, and just go all in. I might even do that. Like, so in this situation, I'm considering now, I go Lucifer, I use that to then push further into red mark to then potentially beat that boss and get the 25 shards. And then I take that 100 and immediately get Olacaster, because you don't need to invest exclusives into Olacaster. Like he's not the whole effect to be able to do that situation there. It's guaranteed on the A2. The only thing you're missing out on, so you would want exclusive 2, because the attack up to all allies requires on the old exclusive 2. But the big thing though that I think is really useful is a 3-turn cooldown guaranteed CC. And then on the final boss, I can find another CC. Like a 3-turn guaranteed like that is very difficult to find. Maybe combined with like a Zyra, or I use that wave for like Catherine, and then I get the cooldown back for the boss kind of thing. But I don't need to worry about too much when it comes to it. It's almost like the exclusive one makes him worse because that's when he actually revives himself. Whereas like don't worry about it. Let Lucifer take care of it. You don't need to come back. So it's kind of an interesting idea.
Yeah. I think what's also cool about it is like if you go, as you're saying, Lucifer E3, you're going to get his E3. And this is one of the only scenarios where his E3 really works. You come in with Oldcaster, you tenacity down, defense down, Lucifer suddenly double pops with his ultimate, right? And now you're clearing through waves almost as if he's an AoE damage. They're obviously not nearly as quick, but at least his E3 now gets value due to Oldcaster, as well as, constantly having the extra value from his E1 and E2, which I think are both really, really good. I personally think that's a really interesting strategy. And I'm a huge fan of Lucifer. And I said this, if I could, I would convert my Lucaia to Lucifer today, just because now that I've enrolled, she's literally just obsolete.
Yeah,
she just doesn't do anything. It's actually tragic. It's like, dang, I got lucky, but also like, dang.
Yeah, that's a bummer. Yeah, like it's like the Nidrold's like the dream pull now. He's just so head and shoulders above the other characters when it comes to damage, that he's awesome. Then the last thing just to close out would be going the Luna route, be able to push dungeons better, but then main thing would be pushing through the force mark here and being able to go all in and try to do the same thing, but with Luna instead of that. But then the main thing here would be the reason why I'm not as excited about it is because of just how much I have invested in the red mark versus force mark. So red mark, I have like 30 speed on both, 20 attack on both, almost 20 attack and crit. And then the other one, it's like I just have 20 speed on both, but then 10s everywhere. So it's like it's such a big difference between the investment of the two. And then there's all these benefits of Lucifer and stuff that I would want to have. And then Oldcaster seems really cool. So imagine I just go like only focus on red mark characters and then have like a fully stacked red mark and then make the best characters all red, could work out. But then, Nidrold is so good that I'm missing out on Nidrold stats, so it's like both of these, it's like, I feel like I'm just split down the middle on exactly what to do. Because the Luna thing is not as sexy as that, but I think it might be smartest because then I get all that. I get the 25. I get Nidrold fully statted up. I do the exact same thing, but I make Nidrold my main character that I put all this into. It makes Barry better, and Barry's my favorite hero so far. He's a lot of fun. So there's all these potential things that I think going all in on force mark would be the quote unquote smarter strategy,
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say as my final thoughts was like, you have Lucifer, who's kind of the more risky strategy. You don't really know until you get to the dungeon how much stats, how much speed you truly need until you watch it. Obviously, there's some stat recommendations, but each team's different. So you run in, you plan on going for Gwyneth. Let's say, I don't know, what's your highest stage rum? 27, 28 on auto?
On auto, probably 28.
28. Okay, so the goal would be to beat at least 28 on auto with Gwyneth. And if you're not beating 29, is there really much of an improvement? I would say maybe a little bit because the sets are better, but not much. And so then it's like, okay, what about the Tower of Mark? But then I think that Luna is like way more guaranteed to have you push in Tower of Mark. Like she's the safest option. And I think that's the difference. Lucifer's that risky. Okay, I could get way more value, but I could also higher ceiling, lower floor. Luna's a lot more consistent, I guess is the point to that one, which is Luna, revive, attack up, heal. Like you're going to get value out of her, guaranteed. Every single time I've used Luna, I've been impressed. And I think that you could basically never go wrong with Luna. Lucifer is just that the wild card for you in Tower Mark, I think. Can you push 30? And if you can, maybe he's better.
Yeah. And then I think maybe the smartest thing is literally do nothing. Save it and then wait for a new buff for another mythic. And then just be okay, well, let's say they come in here and the Mad Lana is like absolutely nutty. They just completely break her kit with the new update. They don't do a reasonable, because I think the Olecaster one's good. Like this is exactly the kind of power level that you would want out of this. Like he looks interesting, but you don't immediately conversion stone, in my opinion. Like so,
Mhm.
I think that's a good balancing. Like they did a good job there. If it's like an immediate no brainer that everyone goes Olecaster, I think that's a problem. Whereas,
Yeah.
maybe they do something and kind of make a mistake and make Melana too good, or they make Melchio too good, for example, and then or Nita, and you go all in on those. So maybe it just gets more value as time goes on as they rework these heroes. So I don't know. This went longer than I was expecting, but I think there's a lot of good information here. I'm glad
Yeah.
we had the full discussion. But any closing thoughts? Any things you want to finish out with this?
If I had a Walter, I would go Nita.
You go Nita? Okay. Why is that?
Walter can additionally trigger poisons, and so can Nita on E3. So then you have two characters that are really good AoE poisoners that can both trigger the poison. So now you have the damage reduction from poison. You have the triggers from poison. Poison does a decent amount of damage. You have the deep poison from Nita. You have Walter. Maybe you can pair him with like Mafka. Maybe you can pair them with another decent poisoner. I mean, I feel like you could do some crazy things. I've been literally 1v5 soloed by Nitas before just because they come in, they are built crit rate, crit damage with a lot of attack. These are like mega whale Nitas, right?
Mm-hmm.
They come in, they triple hit me with this A3. They nuke me, but then they also apply 3 poisons and then detonate all 3 poisons at the end. I mean, she's actually a lot crazier than I think people
She's pretty
people
scary.
suggest. Because she also has the passive, which she pursues targets at the end of
This
her
is interesting.
turn. It's like, okay, if she's pursuing, then she's applying more poisons with basic. It's like she's a little crazy if you get poisoners with her, and that's why I'm disappointed that I don't have any poisoners. Like I have all the support characters, but none of the real poisoners to play with.
Mm-hmm. And also, it's pretty cool because Walter and her are both Sunset Sages, so they can double dip in the same faction Abyss. Whereas these kind of like direct synergies like this don't usually work out like that. Where like burn characters are basically all different factions and different affinities. So it's kind of a bummer. The only ones that are similar, since I literally just did this video, you have Feist and Gunner are like the two that are similar, and they burn and they're on the same faction, but still they're different affinities. But it's nice to see the combination there of having like a poison team. They need each other and they're on the same faction. You at least get more synergy than just dungeons. So I think that's a pretty interesting combination potential there. And like you, I have been bodied by quite a few poison teams in Arena, and it's pretty scary when you just get one shot, or they'll just treat her like a Margarita, and then they'll just biss it in and then one shot, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, it just makes sense. You look at her kit, she's a nuker too, and you just get completely one shot.
Yeah, I always underestimate her. Every single time, like, oh, she's a joke, and then you come in and she just smacks you, and you're like, all right, maybe I should go read her kit a 3rd time or a 4th time. And that's why I've been so accustomed to Nita at this point. I'm like, dang, I read her kit like 6 times.
Yeah. So it makes sense. I mean, if people still watching, if you have a Walter, might want to consider Nita. I legitimately think that could be a good strat. Probably like pretty much everywhere. And I mean, I can't really think of any game mode that would actually like be bad there. Maybe there's like other single target damage dealers that might do more damage, but overall they bring a ton to the table and a lot of damage reduction. So like that's a nice benefit there, especially with E1 Walter. So I'm going to end it here. Thanks for joining me on this one here. I have 2 videos for you guys to watch. It's a new thing I'm trying to do. One of them you can check out. You got 2 options. First one is going to be about burn teams. If you're curious about burn teams, you can check that one out. And then the second one is going to be about Clan Boss, and I've got the 3 teams there. Be able to check that out, see which one you like. With that, guys, we are out of here. Peace.